Hey y'all, it's been a little bit since we caught up, and in that time I've gotten a lot done on the truck, but it has been details and details and details, and that's what we're going to talk about today, because going through a big project like this, there's a few things that I've learned. One is, man, the big parts are easy. The second, to make all of it work, that's the detail, that's the 20% that you got to get done in order to make your truck actually work the way that you want. So that's what we're talking about today. If you're doing this project with like a 350 or LS or heck even a big block, you're not gonna have to do half of what I did. And I've spent these last 6 weeks or so just doing all these little details. So man, that's engine oil lines, power steering lines, brake lines, intake charge pipe from the intercooler to the engine, and then from the turbo to the intercooler, and back purge stainless radiator hoses, you know, because that's a thing. Some of this is just I enjoy fabricating and I want to do this type of detailed work. And, you know, if you got to remake something, just, you know, take the opportunity to make it with real fine gear. So a lot of this stuff I ended up making, certainly with parts store stuff, like brake lines and flares. That's all from, you know, I went to Summit and got Earls and all these other fittings that were really nice. But most of the fabrication that I ended up doing to make the charge pipes and radiator hoses actually came from Vibrant. They make race car stuff usually, but you can get all these little pie cuts and bins, and it's great stuff. And it's just, what is it? Are neither of the David playing with you? Dave is actually jumping to the next part. He's taking apart the rear leaf packs because we're about to put this truck at full bump. We're not going to talk about that today. We're staying focused on details. So in this list of things that I kind of felt like I needed to get done, high on it, upper and lower radiator hoses. So these are made from Vibrant stainless steel. These are 1 3/4, both upper and lower. And then I also went ahead and included the return lines from the coolant filter and the heater core. So there's no additional return line heater hose running up to the radiator. So that's all consolidated into one piece. The lower, if you look way on down there, that lower down there, that routes up and over the frame rail. But the Banks kit would have had you have a specialized rubber hose that went, and that just doesn't fit anymore around the engine cage, which is that tube landing right there. So I had to make a little jog, but when you've got pie cuts, man, there's not much that you can't get done. Speaking of pie cuts, I went ahead and remade this part here out of aluminum and just got a much smoother and better bend out of it. This is a 2 3/4 to 3-inch transition for the intercooler. On the charge pipe, that's all 3-inch, and again, nice bends from Vibrant, but they've got some real specific bends that are just make that job a whole lot easier. I'll show you what I'm talking about. This here, this mandrel, super tight 90. It's got I think it's a 1.5-inch radius, but it's below 3-inch centerline radius on a 3-inch piece of tubing. And then a nice sweeping 3-inch. And then this actually is the same super tight radius 120, but I cut it in the middle and switched and gave it a rotation. So you've got this tight radius to route up and over, and then down in here using a sweeping 90. It all nicely clears the second alternator and the engine cage. It just barely fits. It's that 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound package. It's just a lot in this little confined area. And the reason it's a lot is because these inner fenders are all gone now, right? This is where the tires live when they come up on full compression. There's no place to put any of that stuff anymore. And if I weren't running 40s or trying to push them, you know, this far vertically, it wouldn't be as big a deal. And if I didn't have the 6.2 and the turbo and all the stuff that goes with it,
when you don't have all of that in there, maybe, yeah,
then you know, it'd be a little bit easier. But you know, this is what I picked, and this is kind of the challenge that I set up for. In any case, it is these details that chew up time. You get the right parts, you get the right tools and gear to be able to build them, and then you're just applying hours, and those hours stack up. And I guess my point here is just to do the coil front suspension, you don't have to do all these sorts of things, but if you are revisiting your front suspension, you may impact one or two other systems that are adjacent, I guess, and just don't be afraid to remake them in the way that you want. But I would caution, don't go down a path that you want to completely rebuild this thing from scratch and make it all perfect and, you know, turn your K5 or Suburban into like this Ultra 4 sort of truck. It doesn't all have to be that way. That idea of don't get it right, just get it running. I don't have that luxury on some of these systems. You got to have the right upper and lower radiator hoses. You know, I got to redo my whole intake and exhaust in order to get things working the way that I want. But most folks are not going to be in that position. So just guard very, very carefully against scope creep, because it can become overwhelming. And when that happens, and it happens to me, when you kind of get that scope creep sense, when you feel like you just got more to get done than you've got time, the only thing that you can really do to get around that is just to work diligently. Just pick one project, focus on that little sub project, really, whether brake lines or converting to AN on your power steering, whatever that might be. Just get real focused on that and just work that one. And then after that, work the next one, whether it's a radiator hose or the thing that I did next was build an axle. Dave here. You remember Dave from when we built the frame for the Charger? He helped out quite a bit, put this truss on the 14 bolt. This is a new 14 bolt out of an 07. So he put that truss on, then got it over to Tribe. They put in new gears and a locker. While I had this thing apart, I went ahead and put in new brakes. So you've got the, this is the late style. So this is a 2007 14 bolt. I think they actually call it like the 10.5, but it shares a lot of parts in common with the 11.5. I think the outers are, if they're not the same, they're very similar. But what you've got is nice sticks brakes, brand new calipers, and then a small drum brake on the inside for parking. So I don't have to worry about converting my old 14 bolt. I just went to the yard and got one of these guys. It's a little bit wider than the old style 14 bolt, but not by much. This, I think, is just a really nice upgrade, along with the crane diff cover, just like what I had. A very minor shave, and this thing has actually got a drain plug on it. So remember, the truck's not going to be a super rock crawler anymore. I don't know if that's a term, but it's big tires, best average clearance across is really kind of what we're going for. So not trying to shave this axle too terribly to focus on all of that ground clearance. The big deal is this needs to be much more of a utility type of axle. So good heavy truck, maybe we do some go fast stuff, so the truss is helpful there. All the good, 488s and a simple Detroit locker. Top-notch brakes from Powerstop and their new powder-coated calipers. Of course, I like all the Z36 for truck and tow. I think that's really the hot ticket. And then at that point, you're just bending some fresh brake lines because, well, by the time I got the axle, the brake lines were pretty well hashed. And then, moving it around on a forklift or two over, it took care of the rest of it. I hit him. And last bit of detail before we dive into the rear suspension. Dave's taking apart these packs and putting in the simulators. Well, I'm calling them simulators, which are just a short block that I made up. And it's gonna turn that big tall leaf pack into this one here so they can all compress and we can start to mock up the suspension in the truck. And why are we doing all this? Well, it's not just rear leaves. The standard shackle in compression can actually bind at full stuff, and that's what I ran into with Offroad Design's compression shackle. That's what they designed this one originally for, was compression shackle, and quite frankly, probably 95% of uses for tension shackle. That 95% of uses, at the very edge, you'll find that the leaves might bind here in this Y part. And the reason they might bind is if you've got a super thick leaf pack, like I have, and when they compress, it just won't compress all the way in. So Steven and that team, they're wants to solve a problem, and so they created a wider clevis, gave it a boomerang shape, all good 1/4 inch, press broke. This is going to be really, really great to get in position, but that's what's coming up next. Dave and I got the suspension in last night, kind of worked late. We got everything in, at least roughed in. I've still got some fine tuning to do to get the axle exactly placed and the springs and hangers and all that exactly where I want them. Sort of wrapping up this idea of details, it's 80-20. 80% of the time that I've spent so far on this project has been in building small things that weren't specifically tied to like suspension or coilovers or anything like that. It's all these supporting systems and supporting parts. This is one of them, right? This is the cross member that I just got done making for the revised Magnum mount. I didn't originally intend on doing this, but pushing the link brackets back on the frame essentially interfered with what my previous cross member design was, so I needed to make a new one. And this is a great example of when you got to build a new one, just kind of take the time to make it exactly what you want. And you know, this has been a unique year to be able to spend that sort of time or invest that sort of time. I'm gonna go prime and paint this and put it back on the truck, and then it's back to the rear suspension to get that thing sorted out, and maybe we can cross into 2021 with the truck back on its own tires. Who knows, maybe I'm aiming high. In any case, this is a last episode for 2020. I'm glad that y'all have been here. Appreciate the feedback and comments. It's made me a better builder and a better video editor. In kind of to that tune, when we look at next year, we're going to get to work on the Charger, right? There's a lot of work to be done on the Charger, details and more, you know, tidying up to be done on the truck, and then we'll get looking forward to driving that thing. And there's going to be some adventures that are planned there. But until then, as we close out a very strange year and look forward to 2021, I wish you all, you know, to take very good care, and we'll see you soon. Okay, you've been very patient. You've been very patient, sweetie. Yeah, of course, they turn on the blower as soon as I fire up the camera. Neighbors are doing their yard.